Well, hello everybody. I'm going to give it that minute to let people log on. I'm going to make an address to one John Gonzalez, Standing Bear Network. Watched a great video of his just a few days ago on the Queen's Prayer. And it's going to be interesting today. We're going to run through all of that. We're going to talk about that. It's absolutely for everybody, and it's about the path forward, a Canada that could be, a Canada that should be. A lot of people don't realize what this world has led us to today. And, okay, there's that. Okay, so now people are starting to come in. I might have internet issues. Things are popping back and forth here. Hopefully it's okay. I know it's the weekend. It's quiet. I see people are coming on. Sorry, there's been some activity. My yesterday video did the same thing. And in fact, what the government's done to that video has gotten absolutely imposed on me. And I didn't even get a chance to respond. Usually I do. I get to make a complaint. They didn't like what I posted on New Zealand. That's absolutely the crown. But I see people are coming in now. Looks like everything's okay. That went longer than it usually does, which means I'm definitely flagged, but we'll see how it goes. Hello, everybody. We're going to get into it now. So, PCC, Party of the Canadian Constitutionalists. The design I'm doing, I went across Canada in a panic for what was supposed to be our original election date that didn't work out. But I've tagged the Standing Bear Network, exclusively John Gonzalez, a number of other First Nation leaders, Western Canada and throughout the treaty lands. Those treaties that started long ago, 1871, all the way through. They were bound in 1876 for a number of provinces. These are the new modern treaties. But we're going to talk about past, present, future. And I think that all First Peoples and Canadians need to know absolutely about the rest of the Commonwealth, the history of treaties, and just how bad things can get, and absolutely will get, as you see the past, present, and future of other nations overlap. Other nations designed exactly like Canada. And while we're the second largest country in the world, I agree with you, John. I watched your Queen's Prayer video. It was one of your best videos I've seen to date. But that requires a path forward to address the notion of going back to the treaties and saying we must stand with the treaties. John, I've sent you the entire New Zealand history from absolutely the greatest world constitutional and legal experts of New Zealand and of the world community at large. Now, they're not down with New Zealand, John. They're not down with it all. They're not down with a lot of what's happened with UK and its narrative out in the world today. There are many fights by academics all over the world in what we call crown jewels, where there is a portion of the society, absolutely the native peoples of that society, who've either been decimated or currently under absolute authoritarian control of a crown that traces right back to the royal family. The notion of going to the treaties and saying the problems of today, the Aboriginal narratives of today and yesterday with Pierre Elliott Trudeau, Jean Chrétien, absolutely Brian Mulroney, and on all the way to the new proposed legislation, which absolutely will remove and assimilate you from society, making you absolutely officially the fourth tier municipality with no chief higher than a councillor, a city councillor. Absolutely no mayoral powers, none whatsoever. This has been done. This went through in New Zealand. You can go from the 30s through the 40s to the 60s of just the 1800s and watch the absolute assimilation of the Maori peoples of New Zealand, the natives of New Zealand. John, well, 16.5% of the population of New Zealand is Maori. Absolutely. They are fully assimilated, meaning they've lost all their lands. They've absolutely lost all their language, culture, customs, and absolutely religion. You will find this absolutely on Wikipedia. It's a bad narrative because it doesn't tell the whole truth. To put it in perspective, what the Maori people have in reserve lands with absolutely extremely diminished numbers, 42,000, that's all that remains today on 0.87% of New Zealand. As you know, and as you stated, you're coming around to some real important facts published that Treaty Indians only have 0.2% of their lands in Canada. That's all the reserve lands in Canada. All First Peoples entirely in the treaties. That's all they have. I'm going to teach you something about international law, world perspective. Do you know, John, what happens to you or any peoples in statistics when your religion, language, customs, and culture under social and economic binding international laws falls below 1%? You're no longer recognized, my friend. No matter the population. Right now, the Treaty Indians represent over 2% of Canada's population. Over 2%, which isn't very good at all. But it is large enough to put a red flag in international law. It's large enough through language, culture, social economic markers bound, cemented in the primary 6 organs of the United Nations, which also is of the United Nations Security Council. When you fall below those markers, those absolute binding markers, like the Maori people, who, although are much higher than the Treaty Indians of Canada, they're at 16.5% of the population today. But they're not represented nowhere near over 1% in treaty lands. It's under that. They're nowhere near that in language. They're way, way below that. Religion is almost non-existent. The assimilation of those people occurred a long time ago. The trampling absolutely of all treaty rights, crown systems in place occurred in New Zealand. It's already done a very long time ago. And by the time we hit the 1900s, it's absolutely over for the treaty peoples of New Zealand. And I mean over. Almost all their lands taken away, what would be considered crown lands, just like Canada. Provincial crown lands, federal crown lands. They did the Aboriginal titles. They did all that more than 100 years ago. They went from Indian to Aboriginal in Chrétien and Trudeau's white paper assignment. Where do you think they got it? Where do you think they got it? Where do the Canadian governments get all these fine, gross, human rights, atrocious settlements and ideas? They've already been done. Already been done by the United Kingdom elsewhere in a past, which is your present or your limited past. Already been done. And for all Canadians watching here that chose to watch this, you're done too. And we're watching the foreign debt grow in Canada against all those crown lands, just like New Zealand many, many, many generations ago in their past, which is becoming your present. Do you know how hard it is to live in New Zealand these days? Do you know how hard people have to work for very little? The New Zealanders themselves have gone through a series of economic crises that are massively more than Canada. But we're starting to go through it too. Everyone's feeling the effects that New Zealanders started feeling in the 80s. And the devastation has been there for quite some time. People brag about New Zealand. I don't know why you would. I don't know why you would. Why is financial crisis, foreign debt, massive, and how much you have to pay into that, a forever slave? Why is that some kind of model to aspire to? Because in New Zealand, all of those First Peoples, which are in a pretty good size number, don't have any sense of their culture. They don't have any language left by massive majority of the Maori people. They don't speak their native tongue. They don't have any custom, culture, or any reference to who they were. They're fully assimilated, nearly fully assimilated in massive majority. They've lost all their lands. The people of New Zealand are not doing any better. Not any better. They're doing much, much worse. Just look at the foreign debt held. Massively more than Canada. People work to service foreign empires. The Bank of London and the Federal Reserve of the United States of America. That is the status of New Zealand today. Almost 87%, going on to 89% this year of their GDP. Foreign debt, meaning the title to the land is not New Zealanders, it's not the Maori people. Their treaties have been hijacked, ransacked long before the First Peoples of Canada, in largely exactly the narratives that we've seen over and over get applied. What the Liberals are doing today was done in New Zealand 85 years ago. And I promise you, what remained was gone, largely to private property land purchases and government land purchases for their wealthy first-class citizenry in another country. And then they debt slave you. They borrow, saying that they need to increase the economy, borrowing at higher interest rates from foreign institutions, who then lay claim to the land. They say, well, it's to sustain things, to develop things. The Maori people at large are in poverty. Their lives have never improved. Traditional hunting and everything else is gone. It's absolutely gone in New Zealand. There's no Green New Deal there. There's energy poverty, food scarcity, and people work in the system. The Maori people had to move into the crown cities in large swaths, abandoning absolutely everything they've known, their culture, their language, all of it. All of it. You can read that past and you can match up everything Canada's done in its history since 1876, starting in 1871. But we're talking about the Indian Act, and even more since and more amendments. If you're going to go with the treaties and the Crown, be prepared to be hijacked immediately upon your 1% status. With immigration record numbers, that's not very long away at all. And once you disappear from that 2.2% now to the under 1%, all the way down to 0.2%, because that's all the reserve lands, as you've clearly stated, I've published those numbers, you recognize it, you're going to go further below the Maori people of New Zealand. If that wasn't the worst current situation of First Peoples, you're going to be the worst situation of First Peoples. Canadians will be debt slaved forever. All the Canadian Indians will be absolutely assimilated into Canadian society. That is the mission of the Crown, vested from London's Bank and the royal family to all of Canada, all Canadian citizens. If Canadians think that somehow this is going to translate into your wealth, I think you need to go look at your foreign debt levels and how they're spiraling towards New Zealand each and every year, year after year. Trudeau is doubling down. It's not domestic debt. That's printing money, guys. That's the Bank of Canada, the public purse, printing money. We're talking about getting influxes of foreign currency and loans because you can't get natural investment. There is no investment in the primary sector to any normal levels Canada's ever known. It's the opposite. So Canada supplements that by foreign debt. The same model as New Zealand adopted a long time ago. Transferring the land titles of those provincial and federal crown lands to a foreign empire, effectively, whether Indians, Métis, Inuit, and Canadians like it or not. Because again, I'm going to tell you, we can keep going and looking at Section 35, 1982, thinking that somehow that's some kind of golden ticket. But the reality is 1867, the 2/3 of the Constitution, highlighting the powers of the Crown, cementing who's a real citizen and who's not, clearly tells you that all First Peoples and citizens from second class and below are not. You're nothing. You're nothing. You're not even written in the Constitution itself. 82 references, all of you, in what's called a charter. That's privy of the Crown, which is the king in history, but for Canada that's Prime Minister, and provincially that's premiers. They get those titles officially through the customary Crown law, the unwritten law, because it's codified to lieutenant governors of every province and territory, as well as the federal Prime Minister. I've heard talk and over, oh, we're just going to put our heads in the center. We talk about all the problems, but we never present a solution. You keep saying, everybody says, we want our sovereignty, our liberty, we want all these things. We're not going to recognize the Crown, we're not going to listen. Well, that's not going to work. So if you're going to cooperate with the Crown or try to fight the Crown, how about you legally take the Crown? Legally take the Crown. First people say, oh, we can't legally take the Crown. We're a massive minority in Canada. That's true, folks. That's true. No Indian, Métis, and Inuit consolidated political party, if registered and done properly, could do that. But what if somebody came with a platform for absolutely the second class, third class, who are neither in the Constitution, just as the First People, and said, hey, everybody, instead of following through with the royal family's plan for Canada, absolutely published and in the past, present, right now of New Zealand, which is devastated, the absolute second and third class, same model, and all the First Peoples of New Zealand, the Maori, which we call the Treaty Indian here in Canada. How about we consolidate everybody into one political party and we stop the Crown, because legally we're going to take the Crown. What if we're going to follow rule of law? Absolutely, in their system. What if every Indian in Canada decided, hey, you know what? Instead of trying to fight in my traditional way, why don't I take their system to destroy their system? Why don't I team up with the second and third class Canadians? We come up with an agreement, which does not mean Turtle Island. Unfortunately, it doesn't mean that, folks. It means dividing Canada in half. Half for the 40 million near Canadians, and the other half for all the First Peoples. All of them. That means instead of 0.2% land for reserves, you can look at 50% of Canada lands for First Peoples. Now, Canadians are going to say, why give them so much more? Well, you've got nothing anyway right now, Canadians. You don't have nothing. You've got less than nothing. You have a system of a first class that moves the goalposts in only 11% of Canada made available to you. And largely, that first class owns 9% of what's deemed private property. The 38 million Canadians share 2%, or basically half as much as all the First Peoples, who basically have hardly anything. Look at Ontario, look at BC, largely the unceded. Look at it. There's no massive lands for you. There's massive crown lands. Provincial for the premiers through the lieutenant governor, federal for the federal government prime minister. The prime minister, through governor general and full crown control of all lieutenant governors, can end all this tomorrow. This party, PCC, Party of the Canadian Constitutionalists, I'm building it right now. I have now 3.5 years to build the foundation. I would like to change that foundation 50-50, meaning let's look at Canada, settle the claims in full self-government, self-determination, and at least half the Crown lands transferred to absolute reserve status for all the First Peoples, Métis, and Inuit. All of it. All of it. Before you say, oh no, we want it all, I think you should look at the United States of America, meaning you can continue on in this narrative, believing that the Crown is ever going to work for you, at the absolute example of New Zealand, who defeated a majority comparatively to you per person per capita in New Zealand. When they got that down under 1%, you watch the laws fly. Indian to Aboriginal to now a fully assimilated Maori, with literally no lands, barely anything for minority, 42,000 reserve Maori Indians, basically. Is that the future we all are going to partake in? First Peoples have to ask themselves this now. If you don't think it's true, you're going to go through residential school genocide, and I'm going to continually, explosively present truth after truth that can't be denied. And in all those truths, I promise you, for Canadians sitting here today listening, your truth is absolutely no better if you're from a small business, medium business, large business, domestic Canadian owner down to the working Joe Jane Canadian. Your future is grim. What we're seeing right now is only the beginning only a taste of a future of absolute slavery. Now, First Peoples, a lot of the chiefs, they think that, well, as long as that third class largely is paying at least a few peanuts out to us and our crown autocracy we've accepted, this works for me. As long as I have a future, whether my people don't have a future or those people, folks, it's not sustainable. And if you don't believe me, go look at New Zealand. That is your future. Their very past. That's present today. As I publish every year and every major loss until there was nothing left for anybody. 89%. That's what all federal and provincial crown lands are today. Is also nearly complete for the foreign debt holders. 89%. That will be Canada. Guaranteed. It's only a matter of time. And as the massive colonial immigration explodes, 400,000, 435,000. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that each set of 2-year increments, you're almost doubling the Treaty Indian population of Canada. Every 2 years. How many years until that 2.2% population is under the 1%? Not very long at all. And these systems, these crown colonial jewel designs, Canada being the first, but a massive, large population of First Peoples, takes more time, but they've proved the New Zealand model works. Canada 1 worked. It worked in New Zealand. London is going to win. The Crown First Class is going to win. The pyramid scheme is nearly complete there. We are not very far off from getting there. And again, for the last time, I'm going to say it for the third time, just so everybody gets it. Social, economic, binding international law. Look at the markers. Look what happens when you fall under 1%. Your culture, if it's not practiced and it's below 1%, you don't register on the world stage in their statistics, meaning, bye, you're the minority's minority. Bye, you're in the other category. You don't even get your people listed. When your languages are no longer in that percentage, you no longer get listed. That marker becomes other. And it goes on through your religious practices. When you're no longer in that threshold of the 2.2% now, and you're under 1%, you're called other. You've effectively disappeared. And then you watch the Crown government enforce new laws that they're not required to get your approval, because the international stage will say, you're other. We don't want to hear it. You're other. You're other. Doesn't matter how many people you have in the country. You're other. You've been assimilated. I'm sorry. What do you want us to do? The majority of Indians are no longer spiritually, religiously, or speaking in any narrative sense over 1%. You're other. Good luck with the treaties and holding on to the crown. There is only one narrative for the majority of Canadians and the minority of First Peoples. Take the country back. Take the land back. There's only one narrative going forward. That means destroying the crown. How do you destroy the crown? A minority elected prime minister, the day of election, This is Canadian absolute constitutional law, highest law in the land. Canadians' greatest legal minds couldn't stop you. And I know because I have Canada's best constitutional expert in history alive and well today, and can't dispute what I say. In fact, has a presentation for every province in Canada. For every province in Canada. No one's really seen it because it goes against the crown. It's not good. It destroys that racist first class, that colonial genocidal maniac first class, psychopath, sociopath, complete narcissist. They don't want it to end. They will destroy all of you before they ever lose so much as a smidgen of power. But you don't have to tolerate that. Because in an election cycle, a minority elected prime minister, meaning you just need only about 31%, you elect the prime minister, and in the absolute highest governing laws of Canada, Canada's Constitutional Act, the first 2/3 tell you exactly what the prime minister gets to do the day he's elected, or she. And that's the platform of the PCC that I'm ready to split 50-50 with First Peoples and Canadians. I will make a binding legal founding membership, half First Peoples, half Canadians. And upon election day, in a minority, meaning as low as 31% of the Canadian electorate electing a prime minister, a minority, who doesn't need any House, no appointed Senate, they're sworn to the Prime Minister anyway, can issue a series of letters the day of election on a podium announcing a win. The Prime Minister can get up and say, "Thank you, everybody, for voting me through in this minority. I am now officially serving notice, and it will be in writing, to go through the House of Commons, to go through every legislature, absolutely out to all lieutenant governors and governor general, your official letter of removal. You're being fired in 30 days' time," because that's Canadian constitutional binding law. That's the address. And 30 days, which is also the ascension day to office, Prime Minister sits in, and you know what happens, folks? They're all terminated. Within 90 days, absolutely a new set, Governor General of Canada, appointed by Prime Minister, and all lieutenant governors of every province, whose constitutional legal responsibility, lieutenant governors for the provinces, territories, and Governor General, is to stamp all acts and bills, and even to allow Parliament and all the legislatures to run. Effectively, if you have your own Crown powers, because you've now implemented your own after the 30 days, you gave your notice, you did the constitutional requirements, no act, bill of any legislature or Parliament can effectively go through. With the new sworn to the Prime Minister for all the people, will say, no, we won't stamp your bills, we won't allow your legislature to continue, we won't allow your Parliament to continue, right across Canada, all legislatures, all Parliament, until the people get constitutional conventions. Meaning, if an MP federally, and all federal representative, regardless of your political party, doesn't do it, doesn't go out to their ridings and implement constitutional conventions in all their areas, and every provincial MLA doesn't go out and do it, they're not going to get paid. Not only that, they can't legislate. Because in order to legislate in Canada, under Canada's Constitution, requires a stamp from a lieutenant governor in the respective province, and absolutely federally the governor general. No police are going to come in and administer anything. They're all under the privy of Governor General, every police force in Canada. The Canadian military is sworn and under the Governor General of Canada. That's the Crown, who is sworn to the Prime Minister. That's the official king or queen, if it's a woman, of Canada. That's how it's legally been, absolutely, since 1867. That is the Constitution, highest law of Canada. That's what a good person can do for all First Peoples and all Canadians in Canada. You can destroy the Crown. That's effectively what we're talking about here. Constitutional conventions for absolutely all First Peoples in their own narrative, the nation within the UN state called Canada, and a separate constitution for all the Canadian citizens of Canada. All land, because of the power of Lieutenant Governor, who's held to Governor General, who's held to Prime Minister. That is the constitutional law of Canada, the highest law of Canada. No Supreme Court, no Superior Court will entertain any challenges because they're overridden, because they're sworn to the Lieutenant Governors of the respective provinces. That's Superior Courts. And absolutely, the Supreme Court, highest court in Canada, is all bound to Governor General. And again, what does that mean? It means the entire justice system is absolutely under control of Prime Minister anytime they want. All they have to do is pick up the phone, call the Governor General. Governor General is sworn to Prime Minister on the advice of the Prime Minister. Prime Minister hires and fires Governor General anytime they want. If you don't believe me, Trudeau just fired a Governor General, appointed the Chief Justice. Justice Wagner became Governor General interim and rewrote the entire narrative of Governor General in full legal speak. Everything I've just told you is there. It's also been there the entire time in your Constitution. 1867, 1982, Section B Charter, and the Bill of Rights. Folks, this is the truth. Whether you're a first person or a Canadian citizen underneath the first class, you together can not only release Canada to the people for the first time in Canada's history, you can also cement constitutionalism, meaning writing the rules of governance you're going to be governed by, writing how to be governed, and absolutely cementing accountability to all politicians forevermore. I've been working on this since I left provincial politics, full time. I've been in every university, all the top universities, in more than 160 plus countries now. I have 167 of the world's greatest constitutional experts. I have an economic plan backed up by the world's best legal experts. I blow Canada's political parties out of the water just as an individual third-class citizen. I blow them out of the water. They have no experts, not even an immeasurable stick, to bring forward like I can. It's already been done. The work's already been done. The problem we face now today is building the binding founding membership that's lifetime, registered in Canada's legal system, and yes, under the Crown, under their rules. And I'm sorry, First Peoples, you can't escape that. The only way to escape it is to take it over and destroy it. And that means you're going to have to share the stage with the other size in majority of Canada, the second and third class, which means, yes, making a 50-50 deal that we cement right from the foundation of this first ever political party and political narrative in all of Canada's history that's been called for since 1867. But nobody of the first class, no one of the paid media, no premier, no ministry, no MLA, no Canadian government in absolutely appointed Senate. Do you understand? Appointed Senate who has an oath sworn to Prime Minister will ever help you. They are the executive first class. They are absolutely rewarded for destroying First Peoples, usurping your treaty rights, destroying your sovereignty, your culture, your language, your people, in full-blown genocide, as well as all House-elected MPs who share the same oath. They're elected by the people, but when they get there, they get sworn in. They make an oath to the Crown and Majesty of Canada, meaning you were elected by the people, but you immediately sign an oath to take your office to damn the people, damn all the First Peoples, and take your place in the Crown autocracy. That is the Crown customary law of Canada, the absolute cementing of codification in our limited Big C Constitution 1867. It's written out for you there, folks. If you take the time to read it, you take the time to go to every major university in the world, Harvard, Princeton, Yale. I can go on and on and on to so many you've never even heard of, but they're highly regarded institutions that share space with Harvard and the rest of them. Absolutely. Oxford, we can go on. University of London, University of England, goes on and on and on. I've gone through all of them. The best legal minds in the world today. Absolutely. We can do this together and together only. The longer you wait to make this decision, the worse it's going to be. And I know the fear is, don't get into the Canadian system or you've given up totally. I'm sorry, but that's just more Crown propaganda by the first class to keep you under their thumb until such a time your numbers have dwindled below the 1% markers in international law, where you become other. And Aboriginal, Indian, Indigenous isn't going to fucking matter anymore. If you don't believe me, look at New Zealand. Look at New Zealand. I put much time into that video yesterday that's now officially hijacked. I may have to try and redo that video and carefully navigate the process on Facebook. It's sad. It's sad. The one video of such importance, but of course that's the one they're going to get their way with. That's the Crown. It always has been. It's evil. If you've ever seen Lord of the Rings, my precious, the one ring to rule them all, that's the federal PM. My precious, my power. The people aren't there. They will kill, rape, murder, cheat, lie, steal, the gravest of human rights violations to hold their precious. It's a 950-year-old system, supposed to be legal in the world today, but there's just so much wealth and power attached to it, so much greed, disease of the mind, inhumanity. It's almost impossible to resist. If those who feel they don't trust me, I suggest you go look at the political party I held and I resigned from. The Crown has no control over me. You'll find I'm the poorest politician in the history of Canada, the only third-class politician to come forward and bring a political party registered legally with the Crown, with absolutely no sworn allegiance to the Crown, and absolutely the lowest net income of any politician in the recorded history of Canada to lead and run a majority. And I resigned that. The Crown doesn't control me. I've set about work in what I learned from that provincial system, what I absolutely learned, and started a path out in the world stage today for all Canadians, all First Peoples. We can do this together. No, I cannot restore Turtle Island. I would be a liar if I said I could. But I can return half. And Canadians, you can get half a country where currently you're at 9%. How does that feel? And in the future, there's no guarantee that you're going to remain in that 9%. Because like I said, already much of the first class holds the property in deed and title, just like what happened to New Zealand. And New Zealand's much, much worse. Learn the truth, folks. Go look at the last link I posted, all of New Zealand's historical history, brought to me after my video yesterday that didn't do so well because I'm shadow banned on Facebook. I'm nailed for stealing. But all of you can make that choice, and we can only do it together. I have 3.5 years for people wondering why I'm not pounding out PCC. This old dog's been in politics for a while. He's learned a lot of tricks. And I'm going to tell you, you don't run any new political party anything under at least 1 year window. Because when you go over that, people forget. Trudeau and NDP pulled a fast one on Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. His immediate rush, because that's what Canadians do. They look for the next fiction. And they all gravitate to it right away. They become stale after a year. Pierre Poilievre is going to become stale after a year. And now it's 3.5 years because of the promise between the Liberals and the NDP. That's what happens. There will not be any vote to hold a new election. It's not going to be. It's going to be 3.5 years. There's no getting out of that. That's a Liberal NDP playbook, an old trick in the book, a colonial trick in the book to undermine democracy. Your feelings today are not going to be your feelings 2.5 years from now. And Trudeau knows it. NDP knows it too. They've got all the data, all the research, just like myself. So do Conservatives. They've played the game too. Nobody knows better than Conservatives, Liberals. Canadians all excited about the vote, but then there's going to be several years of Pierre Poilievre doing this. Talking about the same regurgitation over and over, and people are going to start tuning it out. And that immediate rush that comes that maybe in this 6-month period, if there had been a snap election, maybe he would have, but not this far out. That's why I'm quiet. That's why I've gone back to rebuilding the foundation. I can register PCC tomorrow. There's no doubt I have a clear mass amount of forms, but it's not a strong foundation. It was rushed. It was done through the pandemic. I have a skewed sense of membership. I would like First People to join. And this is my message, John, Howie, Roland should be tagged. I should have tagged Roland Crow and many others. Dean, you're there. There's a lot of others. But folks, this is the way forward, the only way forward for all Canadians and absolutely all First Peoples. If you don't see that, you go show me a country that was successful in this system. There isn't one. It's the opposite. No First Peoples ever win. Nobody ever wins. Outside of South Africa, an imposed constitution, a voided system completely. Elections voided. The political parties voided. The constitution in place voided. by the P5. And I'm doing that with residential school genocide. That is the mission between now and June 28th, 2022. Get the chiefs to report the radar, ground penetrating radar, and the results of the official bodies found. Because when you start reporting, you start the same action Nelson Mandela had to do. Canada, in its system, doesn't recognize ground penetrating radar. No, they don't. But fortunately for the First People, the UNSC does. The ICC does. We win the 5, we can change Canada. But with recent conflicts with Russia, the divide of China now, and it's USA and the colonial empires versus Russia and the rest. Kind of doesn't look good, but we don't quit. It's not over till the fat lady sings. Games get played all the time. We're going to show those involved how to sell it and teach the chiefs how to sell it to the P5 to make it work for all of them. So all we can do is try. One way, not even the best way, but it does bring justice, and it does bring forward all that Canada needs, the Canadian people and the First People, absolutely. If you ever want to know how it turned out, go look at South Africa, 1984 to 1993. There you'll find Canada crapping its pants. There you'll find the absolute destruction of New Zealand, matching the inverse of South Africa. UK loses South Africa, they immediately impose on New Zealand. Tit for tat. They're not your friend, folks. The Crown is not your friend. It's a cancer like Lord of the Rings, my precious. Call it Star Wars, the dark side. That's the reality of it. The light and the dark. Thanks. That's my video. Stay tuned later today for day 25, story 25, residential school genocide. I pick a nation in the world. I relate it to current events. We go through real history never shared before in Canadian history. It's for all Canadians, all First People. Thank you very much. Share, share, share. Get it out there. Let people look at it. You know what? You're going to be hard-pressed to find any lawyer, any Chief Justice of Canada to shut me down. I cross my T's, I dot my I's, and I have way more world experts, way more higher justices in this world than even Canada can present today. We can do this. We, the people, all of us can do this. And yes, you can have a nation within a nation. If you don't believe me, go look down south, United States of America. And for those acting like it's no big deal what's happening to First Peoples and what's happening to Canadians, if you're not affected today, I promise you, in the limited decades to come, as we hit 2030 to 2050, you will. You will. By then, it may very well be too late, just like New Zealand. God bless. That's my video.